everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Camp.
Ready to take your plea?
Yeah! Kill it all you will. I hope you die in prison as well.
First up, we got a bond hearing in Camden, New Jersey. The defendant, 24-year-old Julio Martinez, is charged with murder. A few days earlier, Martinez allegedly broke into the apartment of his estranged girlfriend, Sofia Ortiz, using a 9-inch blade, stabbed her multiple times. The couple's 2 young children witnessed the attack, but were unharmed. Only a week before, Sofia obtained a restraining order against her ex. Martinez was captured the next day and charged with murder. Today, Martinez stands in front of the victim's family, hoping to be released on bond. But Assistant Prosecutor Christine Shaw argues against it, pointing to the defendant's record and suggesting he's a possible flight risk.
He's already been adjudicated delinquent for escaping, and he was hiding at the time that he was arrested. He's obviously a flight risk. He's already been adjudicated delinquent for escaping.
That's 17-year-old Fabian Ortiz, the victim's cousin, sliding over towards the defendant.
He's obviously a flight risk.
An airborne Ortiz nearly makes it over the railing. But the quick responding bailiff sent him to the ground. It's clear Martinez knows he's the target. It takes at least 4 men to subdue the teen and remove it from court. Minutes later, after order is restored, and with a bailiff now positioned in front of the gallery, the defendant is brought back, and Shaw continues her argument.
He will not stop no matter what, so I would ask that the court keep his bail at $1 million. Thank you.
When both sides are finished, the judge makes his decision.
He has a juvenile record also, as well as a prior adult record. I find because he has an escape priority.
After the judge makes his ruling, Martinez is taken into custody and ultimately pleads guilty to aggravated manslaughter. He's sentenced to 28 years in prison. As for Sofia's cousin Fabian, no charges are brought against him. Next, we head to Muskegon County, Michigan for a pretrial hearing. The defendant, Giovanni Jones, is charged with exposing himself to 2 employees at the county jail where he's being held on a pending rape charge. A month earlier, staff members claimed they arrived at Jones's cell with medication, only to find Jones allegedly fondling himself. Jones then placed his penis in the door hatch and yelled an obscenity. Jones, however, claims he was just washing himself. He appears today with his attorney, Angela Dormeyer, before Judge Maria Ladas Hoops. He's being disrupted, and the judge is starting to lose her patience.
See, I want to have a minute.
Stop. Sir, you cannot interrupt the court proceedings unless you want to be more. She will be attentive to you in terms of answering any questions you have, but you don't get to interrupt.
It only takes a few minutes before Jones starts up again.
Excuse me.
Do not interrupt
Yeah,
the
but
court.
I have a constitutional right to say that I want to testify about what said, and so.
Sir, I'm going to let you talk to your attorney for a brief moment.
Okay, well, first of all,
Sir.
before
No,
I talk to
you
her,
not. All right, that's it. I totally knew it was
A contempt charge could get Jones another 90 days in jail, but that's not stopping him.
I don't be attempting. I have a
I believe
constitutional
you.
right to represent myself, represent
Sir.
you, but I never signed anything for attorney representation. So
You know, I don't know exactly what was going on, you know, but I do like to testify a lot of First Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, 14th Amendment right. Represent myself, Judge.
The judge has finally had enough.
Alright, okay, stop right now.
A bailiff steps over to offer some advice.
Jones, listen to the judge.
Alright, sir. I'm going to hold you Alright. Yes, sir, you have the right at this time. Sir, you need to rest.
I've been harassed a lot in jail, holding notice. I'm not even supposed to be in jail.
Jones was later convicted of indecent exposure and sent to jail for 252 days. He was also found guilty on the rape charge, and because he's a fourth-time offender, was sentenced to 62 years in a state prison. Next, we join a virtual court hearing in St. Joseph County, Michigan.
People versus Kobe James Harris. Is that you, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
21-year-old Kobe Harris was charged with assault with intent to cause great bodily harm for allegedly assaulting his girlfriend and threatening to hit her with a metal pipe during an argument in her apartment.
That is a felony punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment and a fine of up to $5,000. You're charged as a second habitual offender, making that a maximum 15-year offense.
Harris is currently out on bond with a protection order placed against him for the alleged victim's safety. Her name and identity are being withheld for privacy.
Do you see Colby in the virtual courtroom here today? And if you're on a phone, if you swipe to the right. And on that day, was there an argument between you and Colby?
Yeah.
Asking the questions is Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Deborah Davis.
And during the course of the argument, what happened?
I mean, it wasn't even a very long argument. We just kind of both got really angry. It's just kind of like an accusative argument, just like, I don't know.
Did the police come to your apartment that night?
They did, yeah.
And why did they come to the apartment?
Because the police were called, so they came here.
Who called the police?
I mean, technically me.
But following the alleged victim's series of evasive responses, the prosecutor senses something is wrong based on what she's saying.
Your Honor, I have reason to believe that the defendant is in the same apartment as the complaining witness right now, and I'm extremely scared for her safety. The fact that she's looking off to the side and he's moving around, I want some confirmation that she is safe before we continue.
Okay.
As Judge Jeffrey Middleton investigates what could be a potentially dangerous situation, an officer can be seen making an impromptu phone call.
Mr. Harris, where are you?
3 East Lafayette, Your Honor.
All right, I want you to walk out to the front of the house. Show me the house number on the house.
Why? I don't even think this phone has the charge for that, so I'm at like 2% right now. I'm hooked up to this wall charger right here.
While Harris refuses the judge's request, it becomes clear who the officer was phoning just moments earlier.
The police are at Miss apartment right now, knocking on the door.
All right. Miss, would you go answer the door?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Can you take your phone with you so that I know you're okay?
The alleged victim walks to the door and speaks with officers before her phone abruptly shuts off. Then, with all eyes on Harris, he appears nervous before standing up and shutting his phone off. Moments later, Kobe Harris rejoins the conversation.
Your Honor,
as he's being handcuffed by police.
Yeah, Governor, me and both don't want the no contact. I asked if that be dropped. I'm sorry I lied to you. I knew the cops were outside. Don't want the no contact.
Prosecutor Davis's reaction pretty much says it all. Harris was in another room at the alleged victim's residence, just as she suspected.
I don't know why I
Mr. Harris, my advice is don't say anything else. Take the cigarette out of your mouth. The hearing is adjourned. Your bond is canceled.
Harris is in clear violation of his bond terms, which included a protection order that prohibited him from coming within 500 feet of the alleged victim.
It's the first time I ever had anybody sitting in the next room potentially intimidating a witness and assault great bodily harm. Officers are directed to take him into custody on a bond violation.
2 weeks later, the hearing is continued, this time with Harris signing in from county jail. Kobe Harris's original charge of assault with intent to cause great bodily harm was later dropped, but he was found guilty of domestic violence with prior offenses and sentenced to 14 months to 5 years in prison. He was also found guilty of witness bribery, intimidation, or interference, and was sentenced to 5 months to run concurrent with his other sentence. The 18-year-old pled guilty to assault with intent to do great bodily harm for his role in the violent beating of 54-year-old Stephen Utash. 6 months earlier, Utash was driving in his truck when he inadvertently hit a 10-year-old boy who stepped out onto the street. He immediately stopped, but as he went to check on the boy, who suffered a broken leg, he was attacked by a large group of bystanders who witnessed the accident, including Latrez Cummings. The mob viciously punched, kicked, and stomped Utash, leaving him unconscious. Utash sustained life-threatening head injuries and was placed in a medically induced coma for 10 days following the attack. 6 weeks later, he was released from the hospital after reportedly making a full recovery, as did the 10-year-old boy who'd been injured. 5 people were ultimately charged with assault with intent to murder. Bruce Wimbush, who was 17 at the time of the attack, agreed to testify against the other defendants and pled guilty to the lesser charge of assault with intent to do great bodily harm. He was sentenced to 3 years of intensive probation in a youth offender program. The remaining defendants also pled guilty to the reduced charge as part of an agreement with the prosecution. An unnamed 16-year-old was sentenced to 90 days in juvenile detention. 35-year-old James Davis received a year in jail, and 30-year-old Wanzi Saffold received an enhanced sentence of 6 years and 4 months to 10 years because of previous felony convictions. Now, 19-year-old Latrez Cummings is the last of 5 men charged with the assault to be sentenced. With a prior record as a juvenile, prosecutor Lisa Lindsay argues his penalty should be more than just a slap on the wrist.
Bottom line, Judge, there is nothing in this pre-sentence report favorable for this young man. Nothing that would dictate he be shown any type of leniency.
The sentencing guidelines only recommend 5 to 23 months in jail by taking into account, among other things, Cummings' relatively young age and difficult childhood.
I notice you don't have a father listed on the PSI. You did not have a father?
He's not in my life. He resided with his father for a short period of time, but the housing condition was deplorable. He was taken from the father at the court police, subsequently placed, and then returned to the biological mother.
Judge James Callahan then seems to cut the defendant a little slack.
That's what you have needed in your life as a father. Someone to discipline you. Someone that beat the hell out of you when you made a mistake, as opposed to allowing you or encouraging you to do it to somebody else. We've all been 19 young lady, but for a young man, without the guidance of a father, being 19 years of age, I can understand how some of these problems have existed in the past.
After remaining silent while Cummings' family history was discussed, prosecutor Lisa Lindsay speaks up.
That's no excuse, Judge. How many times do we have to give him a chance before somebody seriously ends up free? There are plenty of young black males who did not have a father, who live in the city of Detroit, who do not behave the way this man behaves. he did not have a father. The fact that he is a young black male does not give him the right to engage in criminal activity.
Did I at any time in what I was saying, when I was so rudely interrupted, use the term black?
It doesn't matter. We see.
Did I ever use that term?
You don't have to use that term, Judge. We can see. We all have eyes.
It doesn't
He
make any
is
difference
a
whether
young
the
black
person is
male
black, white, yellow, or red.
It does not give him an excuse to go out and commit crimes, nor is it a reason to show him leniency.
Despite the prosecutor's impassioned argument, Judge Callahan sentenced Latrez on the low end of the guideline to 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation.
I know a lot of people, I'm sure, think the only money we should waste on you, Mr. Tingley, is the cost of a bullet.
Next, we're in Jackson, Michigan, for the sentencing of James Tingley. The 70-year-old was found guilty of multiple counts of criminal sexual conduct for molesting his neighbor's 2 underage daughters over a 6-year period. Joining Tingley as a co-defendant is the father of the 2 victims, Randy Stevens. He was also found guilty of sexual abuse, including 5 counts of abusing one of his daughters, 3 counts of aiding and abetting Tingley by giving him access to his daughters in exchange for money. Authorities learned of the abuse when the children alerted their foster parents of what was taking place.
To him, children are nothing more than animals. Animals to sell, to trade their bodies. They're not the animals. He is the animal. He is the man that deserves to be locked up in a cage for the rest of his life.
Now, James Tingley is the first of the 2 men to be sentenced. During his trial, it was revealed that his abuse of young girls extends well beyond the charges in this case.
Mr. Tingley, you've been molesting children for the last 40 to 50 years. From the trial, we know that there's at least 5 other victims than what we dealt with here.
After Tingley forgoes his option to speak,
A monster who has destroyed the innocence of numerous children. Unfortunately, they have to live with what was done to them the rest of their lives. The lucky ones will realize that they did nothing wrong, that they were just the victims of a sick pedophile. But it's going to have long-term impacts on all these little girls that were molested.
Before handing down the sentence, the judge then gets something else off his chest.
I know a lot of people, I'm sure, think the only money we should waste on you, Mr. Tingley, is the cost of a bullet. But I think it's worth every penny to lock you up for the rest of your life.
James Tingley was then sentenced to 20 to 50 years in prison for the criminal sexual conduct charges. As for Randy Stevens, he was sentenced to 39 to 60 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.